everybody. Hello, we're going to start. Parlarem en anglès, farem la sessió en anglès, espero que tothom ho pugui seguir. Si algú no pot, doncs fem traducció a l'orella i al costadet, perquè no podíem implementar tot un sistema de traducció. No, I was just saying that we're going to speak English, and if anyone needs translation, they should be kind of more like a sharing chair, kind of talking on the air. So first, maybe it's a bit hot inside. So yeah, we asked to put the air conditioning, but it was a bit late, so it will take some time until it gets a bit cooler. So hello everybody, thank you for being here and leaving the food and the beer and the juices down there and coming back for the talk here. It's quite I'm a bit touched that you leave all that there downstairs to come here to listen to us. For us, it's been a very intense day. We've been since 9 o'clock in the morning talking all the time about sharing economy among 50 cities. And as you can imagine, we are kind of tired. So when we arrived here and we saw all this refreshing energy, all these projects, and all these drinks and food, it was really like, yeah. So that's a bit the energy I have right now. We want to make a very short talk with four people I will present later, just to share a bit what has been the feeling we have having in the summit, and what is a bit the energies among the cities we are participating in this summit. When we start organizing together with Demons, a research group from Universitat Oberta de Catalunya, one of the first things we thought is like, for sure, I don't know how it's going to be the program. For sure, we're going to have to make something with the local sharing economy ecosystem of Barcelona. For us, it wouldn't make any sense that we organize this summit on sharing economy with so many cities and so many representatives from these cities, and not having a moment that we can share that with you. That's been basically the working perspective of City Hall of Barcelona. Since the beginning, we started working on sharing economy. We have a clear idea that we should have a space where we can collaborate, where we can share, make the collaborative policy collaborating. So it doesn't make sense to do it in isolation. So that's why we have Barcola, Barcelona Colabora. It's a kind of big working group. I think now it's like 60 people active, entrepreneurs. Hello? Oh, yeah. Entrepreneurs, researchers, activists from the local ecosystem. And that's mostly a big part of what the people are meeting up together with us today. Another thing I want to say, because when I arrived, I kind of had this memory. Like just a short time ago, maybe 1 year already, one of the editions of La Comunificadora, this entrepreneurship program we have to support new sharing economy local projects in Barcelona. I remember when we were doing the speech elevators speech just down there in the room where we were just having food now. And yeah, I met some of these projects here, and I thought, wow, they are kind of evolving, they are doing the things. Now we're with 50 cities kind of being proud and explaining all these local projects. So I don't know, I got this feeling that the thing is moving forward. And here from this municipality and from Barcelona Activa, we are having some contribution to that. By the way, I take the profit to say thank you to Barcelona Activa to help us to learn to take use of this venue today. So and the last thing I want to say, because it's also quite close, one of the things today we talk is we will present tomorrow a declaration of 10 principles that is a kind of summary of a basic common perspective of cities on sharing economy, to try to kind of raise our voice and set up like kind of collaborations for the future. But we are focusing very much, and I think that's also sharing economy kind of philosophy, very much focused on doing things. We are doers. We want to do things. We just don't want to do like talkings. So we are very much focusing this take action, and we are calling it task force. And one of the aims of the task force will be to kind of make easier for local ecosystems of our cities to connect with each other. And I'm happy to say that in the next 3 weeks, on the 28th of November, we are going to open a new venue of Barcelona Activa, very close to here. It's going to call Innova. And it's going to be a place where it's going to be incubator, co-working spaces for all kinds of projects that are trying to practice different kinds of economy. For example, sharing economy. So it will be an amazing opportunity to invite projects from your local ecosystems to come here and exchange experiences, and the other way around, to help them to go there and share it. In fact, the task force little structure we are going to ensure to make sure that all this collaboration among cities are going to continue after the summit is going to be based in that place. So it's going to be very much easier to make sure that there is this connection between this movement of cities and the local ecosystem of the cities to kind of meet or be connected. And I stop it here, just to pass the word. Let's make it, we're going to make it, as I said, short, but we want to share these feelings we have of today. I want to give the word to Josep Antoni Planell. This is the president of the Open University of Catalonia. As I was telling Udo and Sonan, one of the nicest things of the University of Catalonia, or Open University of Catalonia, is because it's a different university in terms of its online distance university, and it's kind of newer. It's a lot more, sometimes it's a lot more closer to the new changes, new things that are happening in society. And that's a good example that they have a research group like Demons that are very much on the front line of the research on these issues. And we are very, very grateful to the collaboration. This could be, of course, this wouldn't have been possible without Demons, and of course then subsequently with the University of Catalonia. So thank you very much, Josep, and give you the microphone.
Thank you, Alvaro. This one. Okay. Thank you, Alvaro. Good evening, everyone. At the end of the 20th century, Pasqual Maragall, looking back over his term of office as mayor of Barcelona, published a brilliant insight into the future of cities. He said, I warn you, it's a long quotation. If we look down upon Europe from a satellite, here we could easily replace Europe with the world, we will see a constellation of points or specks of light that we will not see are borders between states or regions. The constellations we see are our constructions, our physically existing cultures. Simply by taking in this image, we learn something useful about the world, something that the concept of global village doesn't tell us. The organization of these specks of light, which are the reflection of our cities, traces certain paths, pointing out concentrations and revealing empty spaces. The only road that leads from the present world of states to the global world, to the open world, to the world without borders, is precisely this. Pasqual Maragall wrote this in 1999 in an article entitled Architecture and City in the Open World for the Journal of Architecture, Volume 4. Maragall gave us a powerful metaphor that transforms cities into nodes of light, of knowledge, and of freedom, that transform the world's urban network into a neural network, where each city is a neuron for creation, transmission, and multiplication. Today, the word network has become a catch-all, a concept that inevitably arises when talking about both the immediate present and the distant future. Examples of networks include the city of Barcelona itself, now renowned as an international node for digital innovation. So are the sessions here at the Sharing Cities Summit. Or the book on platform economy policies, coordinated by WOC, Professor Mayo Fuster, as part of her work in Digital Commons Research Group. It is at this crossroads of networks, knowledge, future, research, and cities that the WOC's presence as co-organizer of this summit on urban issues is particularly apt. because the WOC began as the world's first exclusively online university. And there was a commitment for the WOC to stand out of its creation and exchange of knowledge, and its clear desire to make an impact socially to that we could advance towards sustainable development models more quickly. We need this coming together of knowledge and public policy. We need this meeting of research institutions and administrations. It might not be an easiest path, but again, in the words of Maragall, it is the only road that leads from the present world of states to the global world, to the open world, to the world without borders. Right now, as some seem bent on the dark selfishness of borders or the oversimplification of self-absorbed prejudice, meetings that looked to let cities join forces, to shine their light on the world, to generously share the spark of knowledge are, I believe, an urgent and necessary alternative. Thank you very much.
So thank you. Then I'm gonna introduce Udo and Sonam. They've been very much for us. New York and Amsterdam has been playing a very important role in all these processes. The first Sharing City Summit was happening in Amsterdam 2016. And the next one, 2017, was in New York. So we were getting the third edition here in Barcelona. So that's why we invite them to share this moment with us. Udo Kok is the Deputy Mayor of Amsterdam for Economy. And he's been together with us the whole day. And he's been already several times in Barcelona. It's the connection between Amsterdam and Barcelona for so many topics, apart from soccer. Especially also with the whole vacational rental challenges. It's been very intense in the last year at least. So I pass the word to Udo and then Sonan afterwards.
Well, thank you very much. Let me first thank you and the city of Barcelona and also the University of Catalonia for this event and organizing this and the great amount of work that you did to put it all together. Just a few really brief observations on my part, because my first observation is that I didn't know that people in Spain and Catalonia, that you work so late, which is fine, which is good, but this whole, I mean, some people seem to think that, you know, Northern Europe, they work so hard, Southern Europe, they stop at 4 p.m. It's the other way around. I never work until 9 p.m. on Mondays. So I guess that's to say thank you very much for making me work so hard. I appreciate it. That's good. This is an applause for yourself, and it's justified. No, seriously, a few observations. First is that I think we cannot underestimate the importance of learning from other cities and from each other. I have been occupied with this issue of how to deal with platforms and platform economy and the sharing economy for 2 years now, and I learned a lot of new things today. I learned from the experiences of Vienna and how they deal with Airbnb, and I think Toronto is far ahead of how to deal with Uber. And I think when you look at it, it all comes down to the questions: how do we balance regulation and innovation? Because it's very easy to say that these platforms and the platform economy, that they sort of provide a threat, which, you know, they do, because in a way that's the whole idea. They're disruptive technologies and disruptive initiatives. So they're threatening they're threatening in a way. But it's too easy to just, you know, push it aside and over-regulate, because that kills innovation. So the challenge is to strike a balance between innovation and regulation. And I think a lot of cities are struggling with that. We are struggling with that in Amsterdam. So it's really important to have these kind of summits, but also the Sharing Cities network, to learn from our mutual experiences. So that's the first observation. Second observation is that, I mean, it's not really an observation, it's how I look at these issues, is that in Amsterdam and in the Netherlands in general, we always try to be very practical. We try to stay away from ideological debates or you know, making the issue too big. And that's also something that I want to share with this group and with the Sharing Cities Alliance, and with the also sort of as my thought for next year's conference. It may be tempting to add issues to the topic of a sharing economy. It may be tempting to add the topic of social justice, which is hugely important and which is under threat on many places in the world. It may be tempting to also, you know, talk about commons, which is a hugely interesting topic. And actually, my city of Amsterdam, our new government, which was formed this spring, we're very interested in that topic and really want to learn from Barcelona, which is far ahead of the pack on when it comes to thinking about commons. But I think we're sort of overburdening this topic of sharing economy when we add all these other complicated issues. At the end of the day, I think we should think about the sharing economy and platforms in simple terms as how do we make sure they comply with our rules and regulations? And second, how do we make sure that as much people as possible benefit from these disruptive technologies? That's the essence, and let's not overburden that already very complicated issue with other also very complicated issues. So let's try to keep some focus. That would be my plea for next year's summit. But as I've said, I've learned a lot today, and thanks again for organizing it and for your leadership. So thanks.
Thank you very much. So interesting debate, that the one that Udo is raising. Now I'm gonna give the word to Sonan Belani. Sonan, we met last year in New York. She's the senior advisor of the vice mayor of economy, development and housing in New York, Alicia Glenn. For us also the experience in New York and always, well, what can I say about New York? No, everybody's it's one of these cities that are so symbolic and so important in almost every field. But having this nice relation and this interest of New York in what is going on in Barcelona has been something really important for us, especially when it's so far away. And yeah, I'm very happy that you are getting to know our city and our local ecosystem. And yeah, I would share the microphone with you for a few words.
Great, thank you. So again, first, thank you so much to the entire city of Barcelona for hosting us. There's actually a lot of us here from 50 different cities around the world, and it's been great. This is actually my first time in Barcelona. I volunteered Alvaro last year to host the conference here so that I could come visit, and he obliged, so it's been fantastic. And I think to add on to Udo's observations, right, the point I want to make is that we have a president in the United States who wakes up at 4 a.m. and starts tweeting and considers that work. So, so to talk about how much people work and how often people work, maybe you guys want to cross the ocean and come join us and maybe run for president. But I think the point there is that there are lots of things that happen at the national level, at the state or federal level, that don't quite translate at the local level. Cities are where rubber hits the road. It's where your kids go to school. It's where you sit in traffic. It's where you take a bus to work. It's where you enjoy parks and beautiful open spaces. And I think one of the best things that we as cities and collectively we as cities can do is to work with each other to advance our policies that have a real world impact on our citizens. That's one of the main reasons why Amsterdam, New York, and Barcelona together have launched the Sharing Cities Alliance and this annual summit. And it's been a fantastic opportunity to learn from each other as to what works and what doesn't work. I can say from my past experience over the past couple of years working on some of these issues, where I've had the pleasure of working with my colleagues from Amsterdam to learn about how they are addressing issues on Airbnb. I've had the opportunity to learn from my colleagues in Toronto on ride-sharing issues. I've had the opportunity to learn from my colleagues in Seoul and in Sweden on energy management and being smart about these things, particularly in the face of climate change. And all that is to say that governments can do these things and sort of talk to each other, but we cannot operate in a box, right? And that's where all of you come in. One of the biggest things that we focus on is how do we create sort of a collaborative atmosphere between governments and platforms so that we can learn from each other. We don't like to regulate all that much, right? It would be a lot easier. My job would be a lot easier if I didn't have to regulate. And I think your jobs would also be a lot easier if you didn't have to deal with us, right? So the goal is to make it a much more seamless partnership between platforms and governments rather than being aggressive or anything of that sort and a negative connotation. I think one other thing that I've observed personally in my limited time here so far in Barcelona is the incredible amount of focus on social justice issues. The concept of cooperatives and working within your neighborhoods, having your consumers and your workers be a part of your business model is something that is frankly lacking in the United States. And I think that's something that we have to learn from you. In ensuring that the benefits of the sharing economy are spread throughout our communities, and sort of the focus should be on creating much more inclusive cities and economies. So thank you again for hosting us. And I started the day with taking a photo of the audience from this morning. So I'm going to actually end the day of taking another picture for my colleagues back home. So do something fun, smile, say cheese. There we go. Excellent. Thank you again.
So thank you very much, all of you, for this time, and especially after such a intense day. You know, Udo, in Catalonia is now a movement for a time reform because we have very long working hours. It's very, 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 very much crazy. Yeah. So I think we have now a talk from Juliet Sor that Maya is going to present. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the meetup. And long life to sharing economy and the local ecosystem in Barcelona.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. I am Maya Fuster, part of Demons at WOC, and I am very happy to be here today, and I am particularly emotionated by presenting you Juliet Scott. I really wish that she come today to join us at the Sharing City Summit. Juliet is one of the worldwide experts on platform economy and collaborative economy. Her work and research in this field is a worldwide reference. But particularly, she adopted a perspective that is not that common in the agenda of platform economy, which is about providing an analysis and focus about how far the platform economy is helping us sorting out the problem of inequality. Economy is not something that is there just as a natural thing and just happen, or markets are not just a natural dynamic. They are built socially, and they are built in order to cover all needs. Economy, the definition of economy is the way in which unlimited sources can be organized in a way that cover an unlimited needs, no? And in this, from this perspective, and also from the perspective of putting people in the center and the economy in place for solving our needs, I think it's important to reflect how far if actually platform economy or which model of platform economy might help us to solve better the inequality in society and provide social justice. So in this sense, I welcome very much Juliette and Schott and her presentation here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayo. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks to Mayo and all the other organizers and cities from around the world. So I'm going to give a very sort of quick overview of the research that I've been doing over the last 7 or 8 years on the sharing economy with a focus on inequality. And yeah, okay. So we just heard about the concept of disruption, which is, of course, the companies themselves came into the space arguing that they are disruptors. And one of the things that they claimed to disrupt was inequality. So many of the platforms argue that they reduce inequality by providing income to less privileged residents via new technologies that have low barriers to entry, exit, and to open access. And this is a really important point. Platforms are very easy to get on for people who are earning money on platforms, much easier than getting traditional jobs and so forth. And this was an ad that Airbnb put on in New York when it was facing its first round of sort of pushback from the kinds of effects it was having. So, are the platforms disrupting inequality, or are they reproducing it? And for those of you who can't see, here it says, the shared economy is a lie. So these ads pretty quickly got graffitied by people who were very unhappy with what was happening with Airbnb in the city. Do platforms intensify racial and class or income inequalities by expanding opportunities for already privileged residents of cities? And that's the kind of questions that we've been asking of a number of platforms in our studies. So here I just have put this. This is my research team. They're all PhD students or recent PhDs in sociology. You can find most of our papers here. And as I said, we started in about 2011, and we began by studying community-based nonprofit sharing innovations like Time Bank. We studied a new food swap where people prepared food and exchanged it with each other. We studied a makerspace. We studied Airbnb. Eventually, as the for-profit platforms began to scale, we started looking at them. Turo, which is Airbnb for cars. I don't know if you have it here, but it's peer-to-peer car rental. TaskRabbit, which is a general errands and tasks platform. We did open access education, speaking of the UOC. A lot of different sites here which allowed people to access training, education, courses, etc. Then we started studying food delivery, Postmates and Favor, which are two food delivery apps like Uber Eats and Deliveroo Foodora. Lyft, of course, which is the smaller competitor to Uber, which I gather is just starting to come to Europe. It's been US-based. Of course, Uber. Eventually, you have to get around to studying Uber if you're in this space. Can't avoid it. I tried for about 6 years. And our last case was a platform cooperative in which the platform itself is owned by the quote-unquote workers. In this case, they're photographers. So let me just give you 4 of our findings on inequality. And as I said, we've looked at class inequality and we've looked at race inequality. And the first one, we've done a lot with Airbnb. And the first thing I'll say is dynamics of racism, racial prejudice, and unequal racial outcomes on lodging platforms. We're not the only one to have studied it, but we're the first one to have studied it in the particular way we did. Unequal experiences and kind of on gig labor platforms in which you have really divergent experiences for workers. I'll explain that. what we might call opportunity hoarding on all types of platforms, in which more privileged people are actually getting better opportunities than sort of lower educated, lower income residents. And then using a sociological term, cultural capital inequalities in the community nonprofits, because when we started studying the nonprofits, we were very excited about them, but actually when we went into the field, found a lot more kind of class exclusion, social exclusion kinds of problems than we had expected. Okay, so the first finding is about Airbnb, and we look at it spatially, and we look at census tracts, which are very small areas within the 10 major cities in the United States. And we ask the question, what is the impact of race, and in particular being in an area with a higher proportion of non-whites in that area? So if you live in an all-white area and you're on, there will be about 12 listings on average per census tract in your city. If you live in an all non-white area, so these are the polar cases, all white to all non-white, and these are all predicted, so it's not that there are actually 100% white and 100% non-white. It's just from the statistical model. So much larger number of listings. So people who live in white neighborhoods have more, are taking better advantage of the platform, and in part it's because they are more likely to be homeowners or to be in situations where they can feasibly rent. They also get more money for their apartments or homes, predicted nightly price of $217 in comparison to $145, and predicted total revenue, because one is much higher in the all-white areas than the non-white. And one of the reasons is that if you are in a high non-white area, you are much less likely to get bookings. So it's hard, and you're also much less likely to get ratings. So you have to wait longer to get your first booking. You have fewer reviews, and so on and so forth. So there's a very marked racial skew. And what we're finding, in contrast to a couple of the other studies that have been done that find what we might call person-to-person discrimination. So if you're an African American and you try and rent a place, you're more likely to be turned down than if you're white. What do they call it? Airbnb-ing while black. These are structural factors that affect racial groups. So it's not just person-to-person discrimination, it's also the structural dimensions and the structural conditions of groups by race. And these are uncorrected for some of those correlates, but even when we correct for all of them, the numbers come down a little bit, but they're essentially the same. So that's the first point. There's a lot of racial discrimination and racial inequality on the platform, and the platform to a large extent is reproducing it because it is further advantaging people who live in white neighborhoods, and white populations with higher ownership, higher home ownership, higher education levels, and so forth. Our Airbnb research also finds that public reputation systems do not eliminate racial preferences, which is what people in the literature hoped they would do by giving real information. So the idea that what's called statistical discrimination, in which people just discriminate against a whole category of people because they might have lower average values on something, say, or they think they do, but actually the public reputation systems reproduce inequality. And we also find that the so-called rent gap, which is the difference between short-term rentals, lodging on Airbnb and so forth, versus long-term renters, is large, and it's contributing to gentrification across major cities. So it's pushing out lower-income households and households of color. And that process, of course, has been talked about a lot. And our work shows it it's quite significant. the sort of, to wrap up the lodging, it's the kind of dilemmas of insiders and outsiders. In contrast to many of the other platforms, the conflicts on Airbnb are mostly between people who use the program and the platform and people who don't. Guests and hosts are fairly happy. It's the people who are experiencing all the other kinds of effects, which is not the case on many of the other platforms where you also have unhappy providers. Okay, so that gets us to the gig labor experiences, also structured by inequality of experience and what we've called platform dependence. And what we find studying providers across 7 platforms is that there's a tremendous variation in how these workers or providers, whatever you want to call them, experience this work. And it depends on how much they have to rely on their platform income to pay their basic expenses. If a provider is platform dependent, meaning that's the major source of income to pay their expenses, they have much worse outcomes than if they are what we call partially dependent, or what we call a supplemental earner, someone who has another source of income, quite typically a job or is in school, and does this to supplement. And so what we find is big inequalities across this group of providers, all working on the same platforms under technically the same kinds of policies, but actually their experiences are very different. Their satisfaction levels are different, their level of autonomy in doing the work is different, and their wages are different. So if you're a supplemental earner, you can earn when the wages are high, you can be selective, you have a much higher hourly wage than you are if you are a dependent worker, in which case you lose flexibility and autonomy. You are much more subject to algorithmic control that is worried about your rating and deactivation and so forth. So this is a kind of big inequality that exists across the platform labor force. And it also maps onto different levels of precarity and poverty. One of the things we find is that the full-time dependent workers typically earn wages on an annual basis that are below the poverty line or quite just around it. Going case by case, we have very few precarious Airbnbers because they have more capital and more earning power. And in fact, their earnings mitigate precarity because they use that as a safety net. But if you go down here to the drivers and the couriers, they tend to be quite precarious, and some of them go on the platforms because they're already precarious, but the platforms don't get them out of precarity. There's an important hierarchy among the platforms that we studied. So in this study on the providers, we have these 7 platforms that I've already mentioned. And the hierarchy is with the earnings are higher as you go down. You need more capital the higher you are. Here you need more human capital. You have more control over the job. And the race and the socioeconomic class of providers also falls as you go down the hierarchy. So I think a really important conclusion or sort of insight from this study, this multi-platform study, which I think is one of the largest numbers of platforms, is we can't just lump them all together and think that the impacts and situations are the same. They do share certain features, but in terms of the experiences of people who are earning on the platforms, there's a lot of variation across the sector. Opportunity hoarding. That's a kind of nasty word. I didn't invent it, but it's basically the idea that what is happening on some of these platforms is that more privileged people, particularly in terms of education, are now doing work and sort of pushing down people with lower levels of education and taking work opportunities that in the past would go to people of lower education. Now, this is not surprising. In fact, it's exactly what we would expect in a period of recession. And remember, that the sharing economy emerged out of the Great Recession, the financial crash of 2007-8. And so what it has done is that it has destigmatized a whole class of work for high-educated middle-class people. What is that kind of work? Cleaning homes, which you have to do if you are an Airbnb host, driving, and so forth. And so more of this work is being done by high-educated middle-class people, and to a certain extent, therefore, substituting for the demand for this kind of labor, the opportunities of this kind of labor, driving, cleaning, and other quote-unquote low-skilled labor for people of low educational status. Now, it's not a one-to-one substitution, because these platforms are also increasing demand to a certain extent, but they're also undermining hotel bookings and so forth. So there is that substitution going on, and I think this destigmatization is really important, and it's certainly what we found in our qualitative research, in which we are finding lawyers cleaning people's houses, people with graduated from Massachusetts Institute of Technology who have science jobs, who are spending their time earning money on these platforms doing so-called menial or blue and pink collar work. So the last cases I want to mention are the community nonprofits. And what we found there is kind of often very intense sort of dynamics of social exclusion that people were engaging with very unwittingly. So we started our research with a time bank, and the whole premise of a time bank is that everyone's time is equally valued. And when we did our interviews, people would say, I believe so strongly in the values of the time bank. And yet as they talked, they would explain why their time was worth more than other people's. And the higher educated people in the time bank would talk about how they won't offer the high skills that they have, like maybe knowing how to code or graphic design or legal skills or so forth, and how they wanted to do manual work because they spend all day coding. So we found it was hard to establish these markets across class, and one of our sites, the Food Swap, actually failed in the middle of the research because there was so much kind of snobby foodieism that people wouldn't actually exchange with other people all that much. And a similar but less pronounced thing going on in the time bank. In the makerspace, which was very interesting, and we studied, one of the most successful makerspaces in the country, what we found also were profound dynamics of gender, class, and race exclusion, and that there was a very kind of a group of high-status makers emerged after the founding of this makerspace, in which they pretty much made it impossible for people outside of those social groups to really get in and kind of have influence and so forth, to the extent that there was actually a system of two different currencies that were used at the makerspace. If you were an ordinary person, you had to pay money to get access to the high-status makers. Among this group, they traded for beer instead. And so, they would do things for each other, teach each other things, help each other out by trading beer. But they would never trade for beer with a mere mortal. So these dynamics of inequality actually plagued these nonprofits and prevented them from getting either scaling in the way that they hoped to do. They stayed small, and as the for-profits really scaled, these nonprofits were struggling, and it wasn't just because they didn't have money, or they would scale and be successful, but by reproducing the dynamics of inequality that were in the larger society. So let me end with the question of whether or not what cities can do mitigate unequal outcomes? Are there policy changes? Are there regulations and so forth that can address some of the findings that we have? And the first few relate to the lodging sector, which I think is probably, there's a lot that can be done. One thing that's been talked about, Airbnb has refused to do it, although it is sort of encouraging people, is to take off photos of the hosts and the guests, so that skin color bias is moved out of the equation to a large extent. That's a kind of easy thing. Second is to increase the rights of renters to be hosts, because one of the sources of inequality is between homeowners and renters have a lot more jeopardy, which means that people of color who are disproportionately renters in my country have less access to the platform. A third thing is to require platforms to follow non-discrimination laws, which in the United States they don't have to. Racial non-discrimination laws in lodging only apply to hotels of a certain size. So that's a kind of loophole that we could address. And then on the gig labor side, I mean, this is something that's already done in many European countries and elsewhere, but not in the United States, which is to have minimum wage laws, except New York, which has started this with the drivers, to enforce minimum wage laws and employment protections for gig workers, particularly for those who are working full-time on the platforms. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the great talk. If there are questions from the audience. Otherwise, we will move to, there is a question here.
About working less, but what we do is work more. Whether you could say a little bit more about the situation of the people who are doing this, and what kind of reasons they gave for, you know, why they were on the platforms and cleaning if they have a law degree, and, you know, what do they use the money for? That's the first part of the question. Sorry. And I guess the second part would be if you could say a little bit more about the dynamics of inclusion and exclusion that you mentioned for your last category. And I think if I understood you correctly, people seem to not really be aware of what was going on. But were there people there, and did you address it with them, and what was their response? Thank you.
Thank you. So on the question of opportunity hoarding, one way to think about it is the fact that some of the earners on these platforms are people who have full-time jobs and are now taking more work, or, you know, earning more. And the reasons vary quite a bit. For some people, it's because they're bored. For some people, it's because they'd sit around and play video games, and why not earn money? So there's a kind of productivist mentality that's going on here. Some people got into it at a time when it was hard to find a full-time job because it was the recession, and then they've just stayed on. On Airbnb, it's also to do things like pay down debt, or to have luxury spending. So we have people in our sample who wanted to have a really fancy wedding. And so they stayed at their friends, all the friends who were in the wedding, they stayed at their houses for a year to finance this great wedding. Well, it turned out that, you know, being having to vacate their home was a stress on them. So they ended up having a divorce after a few months. And then the condo board fined them $40,000 for illegally renting out the space. So that one was kind of a disaster. But So it really varies. You have a lot with the Uber drivers. It's primarily financial. Sometimes it's people who are commuting into the city and they figure, why not take a rider? They'll pay all the commuting costs. They'll pay the tolls. Plus, I'll earn a little for weekend spending. For the bicycle couriers, exercise was a really important. Well, we saw that in the skit. For anyone who was there today, we had a little skit and. Getting exercise while you're earning money was a motive. So it's quite varied, but all of those are all dimensions of it. Now on the dynamics of inequality, so it varied by site. On the time bank, what we saw was people who were quite snobby about doing trades with people who didn't seem to have enough cultural capital. So if they had bad grammar in their posting, if they didn't have a website, a professional website that they could go to and so forth, people wouldn't really want to trade with them. In the food swap, it was completely out of control. If you can think of the worst caricature of a foodie who's very disdainful of what other people eat, but it had a kind of, so there was that, but it was also very alternative because this, after all, was a food swap that was about people reclaiming their pantries and giving people access to healthy food and so forth. So they were kind of like fascistic about, what kind of packaging was used. If you used a plastic packaging, people wouldn't trade with you. You had to have a glass jar. If you had any chemical, any sort of chemicals in your synthetic ingredients, it's kind of all that sort of stuff that you could, think of as like your caricature of a foodie. The makerspace was more interesting, and they're all totally unaware of it. In the makerspace, it was an incredible conformity to a certain kind of alternative culture. And it had to do with, we took a Bourdieusian analysis, for those of you who have read Pierre Bourdieu, which is, one thing was kind of distance from necessity. So people really excelled in creating the most useless things possible. So anything that had a function, people didn't want to have anything to do with. They loved spending weeks creating single-use items, or they'd build robots for weeks, and then they'd have a robot competition, and they'd kill each other. And they had one room where they were building this giant spider robot, which was 8 feet tall and would never be able to get out of the building because it was so large. And so that was the kind of stuff. You had to be devoted to that, and of course you had to have a certain privilege to be able to spend all your time making useless things.
Thank you very much. We will follow fast into the last presentation because we have to leave the room, unfortunately, in not too much time. So we cannot continue the debate now. But tomorrow, Juliette will be also in the Smart City Congress, and you will be able to meet her in her talk. Or in the sharing stand. Thank you very much, Juliette.
Thank you.
So please, now we are moving into Barcelona ecosystem. We will start. We will start with La Comunificadora, an entrepreneurship program from Barcelona, and then we will have inspirational cases. Som Mobilitat. Sí. Som Energia. Okay, so let's start. We have to keep straight in our timings because the building may close soon. So thank you, Wouter.
Thank you, Mayo. Hello, yes. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure for me to briefly introduce the Comunificadora program to you. This is a little support program here in Barcelona for the Commons Collaborative Economy. It's a support program that accompanies projects in the collaborative economy in a transition to the commons economy. And what is important, it says here, at the intersection between the social solidarity economy and the digital commons. We had this dream like almost 3 years ago, when we were here in Barcelona, when Barcelona city was trying to find its way and trying to deal with these challenges in the commons collaborative collaborative economy, and we were organizing this Commons Collaborative Economy Summit here in Barcelona. This dream to have a support program that would help projects, not startups that would follow the Silicon Valley logic with venture capital, but instead follow a real collaborative principle, social economy, digital commons. So that's what, after a social validation process started. This is a program run by the Barcelona Activa, co-produced by Free Knowledge Institute, the cooperative friend Procumuns, and the cooperative LabCoop. So we are now in the 3rd edition, and our focus is, as I said, on the social solidarity economy, where the social value to satisfy the needs of people goes above the profit, and where we try to find the shared resource inspired in the natural commons that we had before the age of the internet, and nowadays that we appreciate the digital commons, like this other logic. So we use this kind of logic of the free software as inspirational cases for projects that participate in this program. We use the examples of the free culture movement, like the Wikipedia. We use the examples of OpenStreetMap, Arduino, and many other cases that provide all ways of functioning and are not following the logic that we were used to. And basically, when people think about that a resource is freely shared under open source principles, it can be replicated, then the first challenge that people have is, hey, but how can it be sustainable? How can you make money, right? So that is one of the key questions. So we have been developing this 5-pillar model for sustainability models around the commons, where basically we have a shared resource in the center around a shared mission of a community, where there is sharing of knowledge and sharing of governance that helps to encourage people to participate, to contribute to the production side of a model, and as well to the income side. And of course the challenge is to bring this all together into a sustainable whole. Now, we use this as a model to analyze projects, but also to help as a canvas to build new models. You see? So very briefly, the program that we're running now in the 3rd edition starts with a collective detection of what is the social needs in the city, where people participate in a collective mapping, and we see what is the resources available in the city, and teams that want to propose a project according to these needs and resources available. And then we have a selection. We have training sessions, assessment sessions, open sessions, more assessment sessions, and at the end, a closing. And in this whole process that now takes the coming 6 months, the projects define their team, define their sustainability model, their value proposition, of course, and slowly or quite intensely get their model out there. No, I won't go into much detail. We have various different sectors that are covered. These are the projects that participated in the 1st edition in 2016. Some of them here, like Ricard from Somobilidad. Some others will be presenting in the Agora in the Sharing City the coming days. This is the project from this year, and I leave it with that. Communify. to transform something into a commons model. Thank you.
Thank you, Wouter. So,
Hello, everyone. We are a non-profit consumer cooperative, and we start in. Sorry. Okay, here we go. We started in 2016. In the beginning, we were 300 persons in Mataró, a city near Barcelona. And now, 2 years later, we are more than 1,090 members. Our mission is to offer products and services to our members to help them to accelerate the transition towards sustainable mobility. And we like to move by foot, by cycle, and transport public. And when we need a vehicle with motor, we want to use a vehicle with electric vehicle motor. And we want to share bikes, especially cars and vans. At the moment, we are working only with cars, but this year we will start to pilots in Barcelona with bikes. And we hope as well in the next months we will start sharing vans. Is there? Okay, here is the platform. Works like all the platforms to share vehicles. You find a vehicle, you reserve it, you open the car with the platform, with the app, and you drive the car, and when you finish, you close the car, and in the end of the month, you receive a report with all your usage and all your information. Here you can see the car, is a Renault Zoe. And here we have 2 screenshots of the app. In the first one, you can see 4 cars in one neighborhood in Mataró. And in the other screenshot, you can see all the information about the car. Here with this button, you open and close the app. And with the service, you include everything. You include the parking, the insurance, the electricity, the maintenance, and everything is included in the price. It's €5 per hour or €50 per day to rent a car. How do we finance the vehicles? We want to get the vehicles from the civil society, from the companies, and from city council or public administration. For example, in Olot, it's a city in the north of Catalonia, we have already 3 cars. The first car was where the people from there, the neighbors, they get €14,000 to buy the first car. And the second car, we get an agreement with the city council that they are paying a monthly fee, and with this money, they can use the car during the week from 7 to 3 o'clock in the evening, and in the evenings and in the weekend, the car is free for all the neighbors. And now another public administration in Garrotxa, it's Consell Comarcal, they pay another monthly fee. And right now they have 3 cars, and they can share the cars between all the members there. We like this sentence, think global and act local. In a European level, we are creating this European network of car sharing cooperatives. Right now we are 5 cooperatives, and this Friday we will start a second level cooperative to open this model to all cooperatives around Europe, and we hope it's going to be quite successful, because any cooperative in Europe can join us with an easy entrance price, and we share the platform and we share all the good practices together, and we think it's a really good value for them. And in a local level, we work with local groups these communities are the communities who are running the projects. They decide if they want to share bikes or if they want to share cars or vans. Just we give them the technology, and right now we have around 8 communities, but in the next year we hope that we will arrive 25 or 30 communities around Catalonia. This week we will launch a website where the neighbors they can put money, do a crowdfunding to get the cars, and we think that this tool is going to be really good to stand up with the cars. Here our vision is to democratic alternative to commercial mobility platforms. Right now we are 5 cooperatives in Europe, Partago from Belgium, us from Catalonia, Curander, and the others too, one from Valencia and Belgium. And as I told you, we want to be much more, and if you want to join us, we will be happy. Thanks a lot.
Okay, good night, everyone, and thank you very much for the organization to invite us to Trust in Some Energia. It's a pleasure to be here with you here. I will explain you this project, this beautiful project that I really love. I believe in this project, and I have been here since 2013, yeah, 5 years ago. So, what we are, what this project is about. This is a cooperative, a non-profit cooperative that is searching for a change, is searching for a new energy model. Clear. We want a 100% renewable energy system, and we want it as soon as possible. So, what we do? What else? So, our financial or economic activity is basically 2. We have 2 activities. One is retailing, the retailer market, okay? If you want to contract the bill, you can go to the free market, liberalized market, and you can contract a retailer. And after this, you also can invest in renewables. So we produce energy. Actually, we produce 7% of the energy that all the consumers are consuming. Okay. So just to, I don't know if many of you know how the Spanish system works. I had to do a master degree to understand it all. So finally, I can explain it a little bit. Here we have the energy system, okay? I think that it's quite similar in your countries, but here we have the generation companies, wind turbines, PV panels, solar, hydro, biomass, biogas, but also fossil fuels, gas, carbon, fuel, and nuclear, okay? Generation. Then the electrons pass by high voltage lines, transport. This is for Red Eléctrica de España. After this, distribution, that here in Spain, I don't know if you have heard the word oligopoly. Do you know about this? So here we work with a oligopoly. 5 companies control the distribution system, and they also have business in the retailer market. But what is the retailer market? Before the retailer market, we have to go to the houses, okay? All the people and companies receive the electricity, all the electrons go direct to the houses, companies, industry, and finally there are the retailer, the company who buys the energy in the market, in the major market, and give the bill to all the consumers. So here is also some energy. Wait, not as fast. So this is, I have explained this, the economic part, but we are not a business, only a business, okay. So we also are a social energy change tool. We want to change the system, okay? So we are a lot of people trying to transform the society with information, with renewables, and to understand how important it is not to consume energy. So here a brief resume to understand how many people who we are now in 2017. We get 41,000 partners, but now we have passed 52,000 partners, okay? But partners is one part, and the contracts are another. We have more than 80,000 bills per month. Houses, companies, industry, some industry not. This is not the big amount. And we have to understand the problems and why Somergia has been an important tool to change the system. Because we have all of these problems in the world. Have you ever been in a climate change conference? How many of you? Can I see more or less? Climate change, okay. But how about energy poverty? How many? Well, okay, maybe 8. Depletion, financialization. Maybe we, I discovered this word a few years ago, but this is also a very important problem in the world. Corruption, energy poverty, depletion of resources, weapons and corvettes, soil, water and air pollution. All of these problems are in our world, and we want to change all of these, and we want to save the world, but we want also to solve these problems. Okay, and here we have the solutions that we decide to take. We wanted to make a cooperation, a cooperative, just because that everyone can participate. We want to make understand how important is the rational use of energy. We are searching the prosumers and demand aggregation that everyone can control the energy. Participation, transparency, all that energy the energy system has to be. Energy could be 0% or 100%. I can see it as something gradual, okay? So there are many tools to walk direct to the 100% democracy, total participation of the people. We have the main assembly, we have the main protagonists, the council, the governing council, we have the financial controllers, we have the technical staff, that they are amazing people working for all the partners, local groups, all the active people, doing all of this with non-profit. They don't earn anything. Maybe they lost some money, but they believe in a future. This is the reason. Okay, and our tools. How can we get this? We have schools. We have active local groups, meetings, social germinator, that this is one of the best projects that we have, and you can search more information. Virtual platforms and collective purchase to increase the generation share of renewables. So that's it, I think. Okay, come on. Yes, we got it. So all of you have your own light, but if you want to make it shine, it depends on you. Okay, so just get it if you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We still have a Wikilog and Moodle for very, very, really short presentation. Wikilog? A Moodle?
Wikilog.
Okay.
And so where's the clicker? This one is to... Okay, so thanks for the opportunity to speak here. I'm Guy from Wikilog, and I'm delighted to talk to you about who we are and what we do. As you know, many of us live and work in cities where it's easy to lead sedentary lives. And from the city councils and governments, you have worked very hard to raise awareness about the importance of doing outdoor sports. But the problem is not many of us have the resources to do it. What if I get lost when I'm out there? Where can I go to enjoy the outdoors when I'm traveling? So wouldn't it be cool if there was a single place where you could find all that information very quickly? Wouldn't it be cool if everyone could be their own guides with the help of emerging technologies? So with that goal in mind, clicker not working. Okay, so with that goal in mind, Wikilog was born in 2006 as a website where anyone, anywhere in the world can share and upload their outdoor adventures. From the very beginning, one of our core values has been inclusivity, which means we welcome everyone into our community. For example, there are many local people who have deep knowledge about the local lands, and they use it for research and historical purposes. We also have travelers who use Wikilog as a personal journey of travel. Finally, we also have, of course, athletes and people who just want to enjoy the outdoors. Yes, thank you. In the last 12 years, Wikilog has grown sustainably and very fast. And today, we are a community of over 4 million outdoor enthusiasts from 190 countries. From the deserts of Arabia to the peaks of Himalaya, people in the Wikilog country have uploaded over 10 million authentic outdoor experiences. And together, we practice over 75 types of activity, such as hiking, such as mountain biking, such as kayaking. We also have activities for cities, such as Segway rides and e-bikes, etc. We even have camel rides for those in the desert. One of the lessons we've learned about building a big community is that if you want to foster collaboration, you have to make it easy and accessible for everyone. So that's why not everyone has a GPS device, but we decided to build our own smartphone app with advanced search navigation capabilities. With this app, you can record your own outdoor adventures, and then it's very easy to upload it and share it with everyone else with just one tap. We also have a wearables app to bring you the best of Wikilog to your smartwatch or wearables device. Yes. The next slide, please. For institutions and organizations and businesses, we have the following services. One is Wikilog.org. It's a very easy way to promote local active tourism. We do that by promoting your brand and trails throughout our community. The Geo Promotion Pack is the easiest and fastest way to add your business as a point of interest in the Wikiloc maps, visible to 4 million people. Finally, yeah, thank you. Finally, I want to say that our mission has always been making a better experience for people during their outdoor activities. And we will continue to work to build tools for just that. I'm also proud to say that as a company, we really value natural preservation. So that's why we're joining this year the 1% for the Planet initiative. I invite every one of you to join Wikiloc and download it on your smartphones and try it out. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Juan Leiva. I am the Mural representative in Spain, and today I'm going to talk about Mural. That is an open source software to build global learning communities. So this is a picture of our new brand office here in Barcelona. In the center we have Martin Dullamas, that is the CEO and founder of the company. So what is Mural? Mural is an open source learning management system that was released in 2001 and is used all over the world. It's basically a tool for delivering online courses. Why do we exist? Because we want to empower educators to improve our world, and this is why we want to give the world the most effective platform for learning. And this is a screenshot of the latest version of Mural. So who uses Mural? So we have great responsibilities around the world because we have more than 136 million users all over the world, and these figures, they are only counting registered sites. We have more than that. These are figures from an outsourced company that do this kind of analysis. And as you can see, Mural is the most widely used learning management system in the world, especially in Europe and South America and Africa. These are our values. Education, integrity, innovation, respect. And today, openness is the one that has a meaning for all of us. Because we want to be very open in our goals, in processes, tools, and results. And of course, because we are open source, the Mural source code is available for anyone. We have contributors all around the world. As you can see, for example, in the Mural plugins database, we have more than 800 developers that develop more than 1,500 plugins. And how can we make an open source project sustainable? Because we provide services to users of the software, like hosting, support, customization, branded version of the mobile app, for example, because we share revenue with integrating partners, with content creators, because we are heavily involved in development projects with NGOs and other government or non-government institutions, because we usually get some research for funding, because we have donations, volunteers collaborating with the project, and we tried with ads, but they were very intrusive for our users, so we don't use it anymore. And finally, next year we are organizing a global conference about open educational technologies here in Barcelona in November, so you are all invited to come. And that's all. Thank you.
thank you all for your... Thank you all for your participation. It's been a very intense day for us, and we've been told to leave the building because it's the hour we agreed. But this is just a snapshot of the different sessions we're going to have in the next 3 days in our hour space. I'm sorry there's no time for questions, but some of these projects are going to present as well there. So we want to invite you to participate in this Agora space in the next 3 days in the Smart City Expo that we are, you saw the program downstairs. So thank you again for participating. The ones of you that got some glass from Leka, please, in the way downstairs, there will be someone from them to pick up the glasses. And I think that's all. Thank you again.